This is a Momentum Media production.
The SMSF Advisor Show. Your expert insights into the biggest themes shaping the SMSF advice industry.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the SMSF Advisor Show. I'm Miranda Brownlee, and today we have a special episode focused on the future of females in finance. Hopefully everything's winding down for everyone as we get closer to Christmas and we have only a few more weeks left to the end of the year. You might be aware that not too long ago, Momentum Media held the Women in Finance Awards. And of course, a few weeks ago, we had the pleasure of speaking to Shannon Smith, one of the winners of those awards, who gave us a very insightful look at her SMSF firm. But for today's episode, my colleague, Annie Kane, who's the editor of the mortgages titles at Momentum, she's going to be speaking with Camilla Love, who is the founder of F3, and also Sally Chadwick, who is the corporate communications, events, and franchise marketing manager at Mortgage Choice. So today they're going to be discussing about what we can be doing to bring more women into financial services and what the future looks like for women in finance. So we're going to hear from them now.
Hello, and thank you for tuning in to this special Women in Finance podcast episode partnered by Mortgage Choice. Earlier this year, Momentum Media hosted its annual Women in Finance Awards, celebrating the leading women in the finance industry and shining a spotlight on their wonderful work. If you attended the Women of Finance Awards 2022, partnered by Mortgage Choice, you may recognise the names of our two podcast guests today. Camilla Love, F3 Future Females in Finance founder, took home the award for Women's Community Programme of the Year, while Sally Chadwick, Mortgage Choice's Executive Manager for Corporate Communications, Events and Franchise Marketing, delivered a thought-provoking address at the awards. But never fear if you didn't manage to make it to the Sydney Awards last month, because today we're thrilled to be chatting to them both about how and why they chose the finance industry for their careers and what they think can be done to encourage and support more women into industry. Camilla, Sally, thank you for joining us for today's podcast. But for anyone who hasn't had the pleasure of meeting you both, could you please just give us a quick recap of how long you've been in the financial services industry for and what attracted you to the industry in the first place? And Sally, I'll start with you for that.
Hi, Annie. Thanks so much for having me today. I've been in the finance industry for about 15 years now, and to be perfectly frank, I thought it would be a cushier job than working in the agency side where I came from. But it turns out that if you are after an easier job, do not join an investment bank a week before the global financial crisis hits. Not the best move I've made.
And Camilla, for you, how long have you been in the financial services industry and what attracted you to the industry?
Thanks, Annie, and thanks also for having me today. So I've been in the industry for nearly 20 years, although I definitely don't look my age, so don't hold it against me. And I was actually incentivized to join the industry through what I call my international man of mystery. And so what that person was my godfather, and he lived in the 80s and 90s in New York and in Tokyo, and he would come back to Sydney with all these fabulous stories. And I said, I don't know what you do, but whatever it is, I'm going to do what you do. And that's how I got into finance. So yeah, 20 years on at the same organization, and I've loved every day.
Wow, that's awesome. And it sounds like, maybe not the most usual entries into financial services for either of you, but now obviously both happy and excelling where you are. Sally, in your opening address to the Women in Finance Awards, you spoke about the reasons why Mortgage Choice chose to support the awards, and we'll cover some of those today. But you also touched on your own personal experience in the financial services industry and why that matters. And I'm keen to really unpack some more of that. So I'm wondering if you could maybe give us some insight into how you've seen the industry change for women over your career.
I think I spoke in my address at the awards about turning up on my first day of my proper job with a couple of degrees under my belt, stacks of relevant experience, and being promptly led to the kitchen to get acquainted with the coffee machine, and a privilege which was strangely not afforded to any of the male recruits joining. And, that's probably a fairly benign example of the sorts of things I've experienced and witnessed during my time working across a range of organisations. But look, thankfully, things are really different these days. And we've seen a huge amount change. I mean, it's pretty amazing to see how far we've come. I think the interesting thing is, and the important thing to remember is that having come a long way doesn't mean you're finished.
Absolutely. And I think that's so much of what we're trying to do in the Women in Finance Awards is not only showcase and champion those who are doing an amazing job, but also really provide a spotlight inspiration for other women who might not have the opportunity or feel like they've got the role models out there, because it is a dwindling number of women in the financial services space, and one which we're trying to reverse a trend. And Camilla, for you, could you give us some sort of background into how you've seen the industry change for women over your 20-year career so far?
Yeah, it's a great question, because part of me goes, it has changed a lot. And part of me actually says it hasn't changed enough. So I have that sort of juxtaposition that sits in my head all the time. And, when I joined 20 years ago, part of my role was actually to be the personal assistant to the chairman. But I had a double degree from one of Australia's leading universities, and also was 3/4 of my way through my master's. So I, like Sally, had that same sort of issue. Today, thankfully, both the guys and the girls get afforded the coffee machine and the introduction to the dishwasher. So there isn't sort of an issue there. And so we have come a long way. What I have seen really change over the last little while is all those women lifting up more women, where back in, the original day, there weren't that many of us. There was lots of competition. And I think that we weren't as supportive as we could have been. Today, that is absolutely turned on its head. And I see so much support from, my girl gang. I was just talking about that beforehand, peers in my industry who are happy to lift each other up, but also, watching some of these young university girls come into the industry and then pull up the university and school students as well through the F3 program. So that, cheer squad has definitely sort of flourished over the years that I've been in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I think support is such a key word there, not just for women, but for any person operating in an industry. You always need that backbone of support. But I think particularly women often feel like they don't have the confidence or they don't have the experience. And we hear that, often cited example of, women requiring all of the skills on a job description before they apply, whereas men would apply even if they only had half of them. So I think that sort of confidence boost is so important, and having people that you can turn to and lean on when you need them. And I think that was really in evidence during the Women in Finance Awards themselves on the day, because we actually saw so many people supporting one another. We had such amazing acceptance speeches, some of them really incredibly moving, talking about challenges and obstacles and how they've been overcoming them. And really, I think having that feeling of support in the room was incredible. Camilla, for you, obviously, you took home the award for the Women's Community Programme of the Year for F3, which you mentioned just earlier. Can you tell me a little bit more about why F3 Future Females in Finance exists and how you're helping young women start their careers in financial services?
Sure. Well, F3 aims to educate young women about careers in finance, and we start in years 10 and we go through the end of the journey at university. And we do that through a number of different things. So whether it be careers days and panel sessions, and even, my podcast, showcasing great role models, which we're doing here today. And then also the backbone of it is actually providing practical work experience. So that is all there to work together to educate, to nudge and break myths of what, these young women think about what financial services really is. It's also there to provide the network and the skills for the pipeline of really fabulous talent to come into the industry in a probably what I would describe a more comfortable and more supportive setting to really, really just engage them and show great purpose within the industry, because the industry has so much purpose, except, people outside the industry don't resonate or can't see that purpose. And so we do a lot of that within F3, but, it's really there to nudge as many of the next generation of female talent into financial services as possible.
I absolutely love that. And of course, that is really the whole embodiment of the Women in Finance Awards and what we're trying to achieve. So it's fantastic work that you're doing there. And we're so excited to see the young women coming through and starting their career. Sally, I know as well at Mortgage Choice, there's a lot of work that goes on within the company itself to support female brokers with its Aspire program, for example. Can you tell us a bit more about how that works and how you're supporting females in your network?
Absolutely. So Aspire was started by Mortgage Choice back in 2020 in direct response to the MFAA's Opportunities for Women report. And we still have a real representation challenge in the broking industry, with currently women make up just 25% of mortgage brokers, and that's not okay. So we set up Aspire to really support and promote the women in our network, but also to ensure that we're playing our part in addressing the gender imbalance in the industry. So COVID did its best to get in the way, but the team have run a number of events around the country, bringing professional development tools and resources to the women in our network. We've got a working group of amazing women from across our network and support office roles, and they work together to really identify what the lived experience is for women in broking and to identify the activations that we can then take to help provide support where it's needed.
Yeah, and I think that Opportunities for Women report was so interesting. And again, just really sort of talking about broking here for a little bit, obviously Mortgage Choice being a major brokerage. Surprising to see that actually the number of women sort of dropped over the last few years. And maybe some of that might be because of COVID and people having to look after children or parents, or, become much more of sort of caregiver during the COVID period, or maybe people had to, stay at home and had sort of responsibilities that way where it came to working over the pandemic. So maybe that could be resulting in some of the loss that we've seen in the financial services space and broking, particularly over the last couple of years. But do you think there's any other sort of barriers that might be preventing women from joining the broking or financial services space more generally, Sally?
Look, for broking, I think the data is telling us that we've still got a problem with a boys' club mentality in a lot of areas, and women not feeling that it's necessarily a safe space or a welcoming space. And it's really interesting because broking is one of the areas in financial services where there's effectively pay parity, because you're paid based on commissions for the loans you write, and that's the same no matter whether you're a male or a female broker. So broking could actually be an incredibly attractive option for women coming into the industry. It's a matter of whether or not they want to, and I think that's what we really need to get under the hood of.
And Camilla, for all of your work and talking to young women, when you're talking about financial services, I mean, are they aware of what it is? Is there many sort of ideas of barriers or challenges that might be needing to be overcome to encourage more people to join?
Yeah, and I talk about this as a supply side and demand side sort of issue. A lot of girls particularly don't even know what financial services contains, as because there's so many different segments in it. And a lot of them actually just resonate with accounting and investment banking. And we all know that financial services is way bigger than just those two segments. And my view is that's just a function of graduate recruitment dollars, essentially, and the marketing of it at universities. The other issue that we have in financial services is particularly in funds management and other areas where we actually don't take on a huge amount of graduates. Our first sort of junior analyst roles are around about that 2 to 3 year mark out, and where people have already made choices by that point in time, particularly about postgrad or whatever. So there is a bit of that going on. And then on the other side, it's actually about, people putting forward and the confidence, and we've already sort of touched on that already. There's a whole bunch and bias and choice of out there, and, people choosing their mates or people who, look or sound or culturally are, have affinity with them. So that there's lots of different barriers. And my view on all this is there's no silver bullet. If there was, we would have absolutely fixed this by now. But because it is a sort of a myriad of issues coming in to cause one effect, all those issues need to be looked at in general to be able to get us over the line.
Yeah, for sure. And for F3, I mean, you established it in 2017, but obviously doing a lot of work there to try and ensure that people are aware of financial services as a career option and know what's coming down the pipeline for them. But when you think about the sort of journey from then to now, how do you actually measure success?
Yeah, I measure success on a number of different sort of avenues. Firstly, I look at obviously, the amount of girls, F3 girls that go make it into the industry, and that, by the amount of references I do or, feedback. And I can see that pretty much, very regularly. I also look at how many girls have gone through at school student level and actually come back and return at university student level to do work experience with F3. And there's a number of them that happen there. So for me, it's all about that full circle approach to really change the dial. And the other issue that I look at for success is also, particularly at the university level, is the change, the delta in that 6-week experience. So we interview people at the beginning and say, how likely are you to join financial services? And then at the end, how likely are you to join financial services? And the delta there is about 25%. And that is seriously meaningful. And that comes of a fact of, the confidence, the purpose of the business projects that they're doing, and, the support of the people around them to really get them there. So it is really meaningful, and they're the measures of success I look at.
That's amazing. And I mean, I'm just curious, looking at why you sort of started this in the first place. Was there any sort of driving factor for you that you were thinking, this is a problem I need to fix? Or did someone approach you to try and do it? Can you give me some, idea of why actually you started F3 in the first place?
Yeah, and really it comes down to the fact that I cracked it. I had enough. And I saw lots of people and organizations out there talking the talk and definitely not walking the walk. And I just said, why the hell not? So there was a number of things. So I had a pitch for ESG, and the deputy chair around the trustee table said, it's nice that you're talking to me about ESG, but where's the gender diversity in your investment team? I had asset consultants asking me about the gender diversity in my investment team, and I had to, as the most senior female in the organization, put my hand on my heart and say, I have none out of 20. Thankfully, that has changed substantially now. And then also we had a period of time when we were hiring for a junior, and we had 280 applicants, 24 were female, and they interviewed one girl out of 15. And essentially putting those all together, that's why I cracked it. I also sit on my old school board, and I also heavily involved one of the universities here in New South Wales. And I could talk to the school and I could talk to the university and say, what's happening here from the student point of view? And they're going, well, the school goes, well, we have the highest amount of girls going through 4-unit maths. And at university, they were saying, they're coming 50-50 and they're leaving 50-50 and they're just not making it into the industry. So I just sat there and just went, how can I solve this myself from a practical point of view that is really grassroots and fully scalable? And that's where I came with F3.
That's amazing. And massive congratulations on such a wonderful company and for supporting so many younger women come through into financial services. And Sally, I actually know that Mortgage Choice is also very big on supporting its younger generations too. What sort of insights do you have around, some of the younger people coming through?
Yeah, well, I think we've got about 45% of our network have been with us for more than 10 years. And so that's giving rise to a really wonderful thing, which are these intergenerational family businesses coming up, where we have parents who have owned a business, built it up from scratch. Their children have watched that and they're coming up through. And we're seeing a really great proportion of young women step into the business, whether that's in administrative or broking roles, and often making that career transition. And so we're seeing a really nice shift to those career pathways as well. For all of our rookie brokers, we provide really comprehensive training and support, ongoing marketing, all of those sorts of things that you would expect. But what I've really loved seeing in my time at Mortgage Choice is that real, I suppose, family element where our more experienced franchisees and brokers really get behind young people in the network and support them and help lift them up. And that's just having a profound effect on the shape of our network as well.
Yeah, incredible. This is something that we're just, really hoping to drive forward. They can't lose any momentum. We want to keep on ensuring that we're supporting, encouraging and promoting women into financial services. I'm interested, though, to know from both of you, if I could sort of round off with an idea of what do we hope to achieve? Well, I mean, what does the future look like for women in the financial services industry? And Camilla, I would love to pick your brain on that, please.
Look, I think the future is super bright. And can I say that the next generation of female talent, because I can see it every day, is just so amazing. They are fully well equipped. They are super curious. They have really great technical skills. And I'm just super excited for it. And as a mum of a young daughter, I can't wait to welcome her into the industry when she gets here, because I just think it will be so bright.
And Sally, for you?
Ditto. I think the future is so positive. There is so much wonderful change happening, and programs like F3 are a real testament to that, of the work going on to support, promote, encourage women in the industry and take really practical steps to move them forward in their careers. And I really liked, Camilla, what you were saying earlier about the change you've seen in women lifting women up, because I think that's absolutely what we have to do. It's up to all of us, men, women, everyone across the financial services industry, to really challenge the stereotypes, reset expectations, and, keep working towards an industry that we're all proud of.
Yeah. And I think what Camilla said as well about, making sure that even in hiring practices that we're looking at, how many interviews are we giving to them and how many opportunities are we actually creating in the first place is so key. Are there any other sort of top tips you might give, Camilla, or that you've seen that have worked really well when it comes to welcoming women into a particular industry?
Well, I dare say, and I do this a lot for everybody, as you probably could appreciate, particularly a lot of those university students, actually the sponsorship role. So, I get asked to be a mentor a lot, but there's only so many people I can do that for. And so my, call to all your listeners really is to find someone in that next generation that you can pull through and sponsor and engage and support into the industry, because, it can't all be left to me and Sally, really. It has to be, everyone's job to pull everyone through, support them in, give them a good elbow nudge into, and just go. Because my view is, if we keep hiring from the same pool, we need to actually widen the pool. So try to widen try to widen that pool as fast and as critically as possible by trying to nudge and sponsor as many people through into the industry as possible.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both so much for your time today and for sharing your insights. And massive congratulations again to you, Camilla, for winning the Women's Community Programme of the Year Award for F3 at the Women in Finance Awards 2022. What a way to end the year. And we look forward to seeing many more women coming through the programme and into financial services in the future. If you've got any questions for me or for Sally or for Camilla, then do feel free to reach out and make sure you're asking them to Camilla Love or Sally Chadwick or myself, Annie Kane. And do make sure you check out the Mortgage Choice and F3 websites to learn more about what work they're doing to support women in finance. We hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll catch you next week for another episode. Take care.